back, my friends, and today I'm going to be saying, what am I doing? Good question. I'm going to be explaining why this tank is broken. How this tank is broken in particular. First things first, this tank is the Vindicator UM. Is my sound turned all the way down? It is, okay. That's better. This tank's the Vindicator UM. It's one of the two Warhammer 40,000. I think that's what it is. Tanks in the game, the other being the Predator. It was the October 2017 event. It was not an easy event. In fact, it was pretty much impossible to do unless you played 24/7 for 2 weeks, I'd like to say. So, broken tank. Not a lot of people have access to it. Only 800 people have actually played the tank. Yeah, and I'm getting told to move. Wow, it's almost as if I was here first, but it's my fault. I know, how dare I. It's the tank destroyer. The Predator is a auto-loading heavy tank. Woohoo! Auto-loading premium tier 7. What a surprise. And it's not nearly as good as the Helsing, and this thing looks like a bulldozer. It has two things going for it. A really big gun, 155mm, even though it's modeled to be like 300, and this massive frontal plow blade, which effectively is anywhere from 125 to 145mm of spaced armor, on top of the already 120mm armor plate on the front. So that sounds great. Sounds like it should be a great frontal assault tank. The problem comes when you just look at the armor. Just look at this bulldozer blade. Yes, Eric Tiger, just fine, whatever. That's a nice name. You can see that the bulldozer has many weak spots. Above the gun, below the gun, the viewport hole in the middle, that is literally no armor. I don't know what it is, but from the armor profiles I've seen, it's actually not, it's counted as 0mm of armor, and then there's the cupola on top. So from the front, this thing doesn't have armor. Woohoo, what a surprise. It also has very bad ammunition types. It's got 2 heat rounds and an HE round. And I really don't like heat because obviously it gets absorbed by spaced armor, etc., etc., etc. It really doesn't work. You can't shoot through soft cover, can't shoot through hard cover either, but that's neither here nor there because duh. And look, we bounced because he had an angle. Thanks. It's also very slow. Or not super slow, but it only goes 30 at max. And it really doesn't get there very quickly because of its abysmal power weight ratio of, I believe, 10. Well, 12 horsepower per ton, but effectively it's 10 on hard and it drops down to like 6 on soft. So it is very sluggish. Its traverse rates are horrific. And then, yeah, it's massive. This thing stands, it's like 2/3 as tall as a mouse. And this is a tier 7 tank destroyer. That's something that's really wrong. It only has 2800 DPM with its standard heat. With its premium heat, or its HE, or its HE rather, it has nearly 4000 DPM. But the thing to note about this HE is instead of 960 like most 150mm plus, with the exception of being the 349 and MBT 70, and very much unlike the SU-152, it only has 900 alpha. And it only has 80mm of pen. Most 150s have something like 85. ISU, not the ISU, the SU 152 has 86. And, you know, British tanks have, the tier 10s have pretty good hash. I say this, 221, I think, or 210. What is it for the 183? I can't remember. So it really doesn't have good HE penetration. Another thing it doesn't have is penetration, period. It has 225 with premium heat. Okay, that's actually pretty decent. Unfortunately, the SU-152 has 250. And with the standard heat, you only have 137 or 132. 137. And that doesn't help. When the it does have more standard round penetration than the SU-152, but the SU-152 has that AP, so you don't have to be so picky with which shots you take, because you don't have to be worried about shooting through soft cover and it getting absorbed. It also has a slower rate of fire than the SU-152. And that I am comparing it to that tank a lot, because that's what this tank is most similar to. And it's not Russian, so no Soviet bias. Another very horrific thing about this tank is it has 2 degrees of gun depression. 2 degrees is the same as the SU-101. The rear-mounted gun on the Tier 8, one of the Tier 8 Soviet tank destroyers. And yeah, see that shot? If I was in an SU, I would have probably used AP. It's just that he would have done 0 damage, and I'd rather have some damage over 0 damage. So, to recap, this thing's armor is good, but not really. It doesn't have gun depression. Its gun has some really weird damage. 900 is, I don't know what the T49 has. I think it's 850. And, you know, like most derp guns, it's not accurate. What a surprise. An inaccurate 150mm at tier 7. I'm so shocked. And it's just like the weirdest thing ever. Totally. And its mobility is depressing. SU-152 is much faster. And has better traverse rates, and better gun depression, and better TPM, and better penetration with both HE and premium rounds. It's just that this thing has 2mm more penetration. It's 155, so it can overmatch better armor, but with heat ammo, it doesn't like slopes, so you aren't really going to overmatch. That was a nice shot. And yeah, what to say? I feel like this thing should have a role as a heavy assault vehicle. Get into enemies' faces, brawl them, derp them, and that's it. It can't do that. It can't fulfill it with the current, with how it is currently. Because this is an armor hole. I don't know if it's modeled, but you can see that it's like glass. That's an armor hole. That's weak spot, and then you can shoot below the gun, but not really, unless you got high pen, and then you can shoot above the gun. And then, of course, why even bother when you can shoot this? And one very important thing to note is if this tank is side-scraping against you, say at this angle, this is penable. This is only like 45mm, or 120. Mine's blanking. They said 45. Let's see. Another thing is this is 55 and then this is 40, so you get HE'd. The rear has no armor and it's massive. It is incredibly massive. So yeah, this tank is easy to kill and big and slow. And yeah, it's got riddled with weak spots, so it is very much like the AT series of tanks. It does have 10 degrees of gun arc to the left and right, very much like an AT-15. It's riddled with weak spots, very much like an AT-15. And there's an AT-15A at this tier, which is basically an AT-15, except for shorter, less health, less 17-pounder instead of 20-pounder, and probably more effective armor. And it's slower than this, so, you know, props for not being the slowest tank. So, Wargaming really missed the ball. That's not how that's said, but whatever. They really just... This tank doesn't have anything to make it special or unique other than it's a Warhammer 40,000 tank. Cross my fingers. And the fact that it's the biggest caliber gun at this tier. 155, can overmatch 51 millimeters of armor. Except for with heat, you aren't going to really overmatch anything because it doesn't like slopes. What a shame. You can also give it the award for the worst gun depression at this tier. And the thickest spaced armor plate? Well, the biggest spaced armor plate in this game, I think. And this is just one plate, and it just varies in thickness slightly. But yeah, I think that one hit. Yeah, it did. See, that's the problem with tanks like this. They aren't reliable, and I don't like non-reliable tanks. Now we're going to go for the heat pen on the side, keep it to premium, and there we go. Look at that, less than 500 damage. That's really sucky, is how would I describe it. But, sit still. There you go. An HE penetration, 977 damage left on 3 health. That is where derp guns are fun. I'm not saying this is a bad tank, I'm just saying that it's broken. And not broken in a good way. Also, I think that I want to do like some sort of series about this. Let me know in the comments below what you think. So, let's see what we can do. I mean, I've seen some people clutch games in it, but saying that the ace bar, to get a first class, you could have to do 2700 damage in a tier 7 and get like 1100 XP. That's nothing special, especially if you're considering, yeah, especially if you're considering the last year's October event, the Helsing HO is one of the most overpowered tanks at tier 7, if not the most overpowered. It was the first premium tier 7 autoloader, I'd like to say. It's quite fast. It's a tank destroyer. It has crazy slopes on its armor. I mean, its armor is not infallible. Not a lot of armor is, but in fact, no armor is. But it is better than this thing's, even if it's thinner. The gun is a 2-shot autoloader. You pull the trigger once, fires 2 rounds. You know, like several tanks that I can think of, like the 40mm palm guns on the low-tier British Lights. And yeah. Also, I would not recommend carrying the same ammo loadout I do on this tank because that's just wrong. I don't know. Because you rarely ever would use this much heat. And, well, at all. And not meant, yeah. You aren't going to ever use that many rounds, so it's just a waste of money. Yeah. If this tank was available again, I would not recommend it to anyone. Except for collectors, because collectors are collectors. And yeah. I thought this tank would be good when it was first announced, but yeah. Wargaming has a habit of doing that to tanks. Like, I was all hyped for the French tanks, and then they just kind of, the tier 10s are kind of meh, excluding the 50B. The 50B is decent. 57's better, but that's because 57's gotten buffed. Yeah. The Foch 155, for example, is the worst tier 10 tank destroyer. The Batchat, it could even be the worst tier 10 tank. Scratch that, the 4 tier 2 exists. What is it? The Batchat 25T, kind of depressing. Well, mean, at least it has light tank ammo rating, but there isn't a single map in the game where it can use that to its advantage. HE pen on that guy, but I'm getting shot in the rear, and I really don't like this situation. In fact, I really dislike it. Another thing this thing lacks is kind of elevation, so you can't even use that as your gun depression. Like SU-101, when I played it, I would push its rear end up a hill, and then you can see, and then use that as its gun depression. Unfortunately, you can't really do that in this tank. 15 degrees is not enough. Okay, reloaded before he had a chance to aim in his shot. And there we go, and now we die. Yeah, he went for that instead of the cupola. Yeah, if I don't get pushed. That bulldog? Yeah, it must be the bulldog on the rear. That sucks. So yeah, if I'm going to continue this series, depends on feedback. Which tank do you want me to do? But that's a question I've got to ask. I would do one on the Helsing. I'd probably have done this video on the Helsing, but I don't own a Helsing. I own a Dracula. Dracula is also kind of broken, but yeah. Yeah. And we have won this one. And that's about it, too. Once this game ends and we see the results of our spectacular, amazing, just bestest battle ever, we will be done. And this is where I cut and we would be done, but I want to actually watch and see how they take this. He's not going to be in our spawn anymore. He's probably going to be down all the way in the, what is that, the southeast corner of the map. And he hasn't lost if we don't cap or anything. This guy probably just got spotted. Nah, he didn't. There's the bulldog. Why would you sit there? Yeah, Fury's shell velocity kind of sucks. Yeah, that one hit. And Bulldog doesn't have any armor, so you know what? It should all be over quickly. Just a matter of if he kills some people. Come on. Oh, I got 3 kills. I didn't even realize. I was not observant. Let's see. It's so far taken them a minute and a half, I think. And great job. Well, now the Bulldog's dead because he's got the autoloader and I don't know what he's doing. Oh, no. Yep. Bulldog, nasty to fight. Not really, but they did buff it, so. And there we go. That took forever. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video explaining what is wrong with this tank, because there's a lot of problems with this tank as it currently stands. And let me know if you want me to do more videos on tanks that are broken in a good way or a bad way, or yeah. And with all being said and done, I'll have to say see y'all. Have fun, stay safe, and bye.